Hey, how's everybody doing? I keep on getting a lot of questions on how I made my Rocket Bunny kit seamless. So I thought I'd just go over a few of the steps that it takes to do it yourself. It's honestly not that hard of a job as long as you have patience. And I realistically wouldn't say that much skill is involved. The first thing you're gonna need to do is actually take the fenders that you have, flip them around back, and along the edge of the fender where it's actually gonna meet against the part of the car, you're actually gonna grab some either 3M panel bond or some Worth panel bond, something along those lines, something that's gonna hold that plastic firmly and securely against the car itself. This is mainly for once you actually have it mounted and whatnot, so it's not gonna shift and crack and move around all that much. So after I had actually seam sealed all of the over fenders on, I then took rivets and riveted in each one of the spots where they originally came from. That way it would stay to the car and I'm not actually just relying on the Bondo to hold it to the car itself. So after I panel bonded and riveted it all on, what I did is I took a grinder and actually ground down to the bare metal all the way along this pretty much line here, and then all the way down this line and all the way down there. So pretty much all the way around where the panel was actually gonna sit. That way the Bondo would have a nice good grip to actually grip to. I then took a 16th inch drill bit and drilled a couple of holes for the Bondo to actually go into and hook so that it would actually stay a little bit more rigid. And then coat after coat after coat. Just keep on sanding it down, making sure that you have some nice lines that look good. And then the biggest part and the hardest part, I guess you could say, is the fact of actually having to seam it into this right here. Now, if I were to do it again, I would actually bring this line all the way up to this right here and seam it in that way. I put it in a little lower and you can kind of see it a little bit, which I don't mind, but my OCD sometimes tells me differently. So I used probably about 2 full cans of Fiberglass Bondo. So I used the short strands. So it was a little stronger than just the body filler itself. I literally sanded everything by hand. I didn't even use any power tools for anything. One of the harder lines was actually these bottom lines on both the rear fenders. I also seamed it back in here as well against. Now, the one thing about going seamless is the fact of that you're worried about the winter, you're worried about the water, you're worried about all of that stuff. Now, I winter drive this all year round, like I already previously said. What I did in the actual inner fenders is I took some 16th inch sheet metal and actually refabricated inner fenders out of sheet metal. And that way the car is 100% waterproof. I even then seam sealed all the metal up. So it's literally like a factory inner fender, but it's all made out of metal and it all fits the actual wide body kit. Because there's nothing that pisses me off more than all the people who sit there and cut their FRS or BRZ for wide body and don't do any waterproofing at all whatsoever. Even the front fenders, they're all fabricated with inner fenders that are steel, like I said again. And that's pretty much the way to go. Now, when it came down to painting, I had pretty much all of what I thought looked good. I then took some high build primer and just sprayed over all the sections where I had actually bondoed and whatnot and where all the bare metal still was. After laying a couple coats of primer, it kind of allows you to see any imperfections that you may have missed before you put the primer on there. So 3 or 4 times I went through the stage of sanding, throwing some primer on, checking every different angle, seeing if it was still smooth, looking smooth and whatnot. Then I'd say probably on my 5th time that I laid the primer on, everything was finally good and I was getting ready to paint or liquid wrap, because this is a liquid wrap. To be honest, it took me maybe between 60 and 70 hours to make it seamless. And honestly, I wouldn't change it for the world. They used to be just bolted on when my car was gray. and looking out the side mirror at the back of my fender as I was driving, seeing these fenders just bolted on looked like garbage. So after my OCD telling me over and over and over again, you got to finally figure something out for this, I finally just said screw it and just seamed it all in. And I did the same thing with the ducktail as well. As you can see, it's all seamed in. And it just kind of makes the car look a little bit more cleaner. Though it's wide body, it's got smooth lines, it doesn't look as aggressive. It's just nice and clean. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask and I'll give you a hand on anything you need a hand with. Thanks guys, take it easy.